Live streaming. For those of you who have ever tried to live stream with the Sony a6000 or the Sony a5100, two popular mirrorless cameras on the market at the moment, will know that it's much more difficult than you would imagine with a modern digital camera. And the reason for this is I'm guessing that these cameras are a little bit older now. Both the Sony a5100 and the Sony a6000 were released in 2014. In a lot of ways this is good because these cameras are now very cheap, but with still a very good sensor. They're still great cameras, which I use all the time, and I know many of you do as well. But live streaming, especially at the moment, is a big thing that people want to try and do, but unfortunately there is no built-in way of doing this with these cameras. Now with some of the newer Sony mirrorless cameras, such as the a6100, a6300, a6500, they have a reasonably easy way of doing this, which I won't go into in great detail. Essentially, you just need to download the Sony Imaging Edge software onto your computer, and then there is a live view mode, which you can basically see the feed of the camera on the screen. Perfect, you can use that feed to live stream if you want to. Unfortunately, with the older cameras, as I say, the a5100 and the a6000, this live view option isn't available, even when you connect it to the software. It's never been updated to include these cameras, and it looks like it never will. It's basically not possible to live stream with these cameras through the Sony software. The good news is it is possible to live stream with these cameras, and in this video we're going to go through exactly how to do that. Before we get started, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, I do lots of tips and tricks videos for Sony E-mount cameras, so if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you enjoy the video, drop a like on it. Live streaming essentially means use the signal from your camera to live stream over the internet, whether that's a face cam for gaming or anything else that you might want to use it for. And you can use the camera in this way for things like video calls as well if you're using it whilst working from home, for example. And it certainly gives better video quality than a basic webcam. So the basics of live streaming are that you need a capture card. This is an intermediary piece of hardware between the camera and your computer to translate the signal out of the HDMI port on the camera into something that the computer can understand and read. Now, for a long time, the most reliable way of doing this was using a capture card called the CamLink by a company called Elgato. The problem with this is that that capture card costs £120, around $140, something around there. Essentially, I would say far too expensive for a bit of casual live streaming, especially if that price is getting up towards the second-hand price of these cameras for the whole camera. Paying that much for just live streaming capabilities is a bit too much, in my opinion. But recently, a whole host of cheaper capture cards have started appearing on Amazon, and they look a bit like this. As you can see, it's not much to it. It looks like a little USB thumb drive, pen drive type thing. It's made of metal. Bit better build quality than I was expecting, but as you can see, it just has the HDMI input on one side and a USB output on the other side to connect to your computer. Pretty simple stuff, and well, how expensive is this version compared to the Elgato? Well, I picked this one up for £28 in the UK, and I think you can get them for around the same price in dollars, so around $30. All of a sudden, it starts to seem like live streaming is a much more reasonable prospect. So the brand of this capture card is Link, but as you can see here from Amazon, there are lots of these that look pretty much the same, at roughly the same price from a few different manufacturers. So I think this is a product available under a lot of different brand names, so I probably wouldn't worry about exactly which one you get, though I will leave links to it in the description as to the one that I've got, which is definitely working for me. So once you get hold of a capture card and you already have your camera, you need a way of connecting the camera to the capture card, which means that you need a HDMI cable. Of course, not a normal HDMI cable will work because the cameras have a small micro HDMI output. You just need to pick up one of these cables cheaply on Amazon. I'll leave another link to this in description. This won't cost you much at all. And then once you've got those two parts, you've got everything that you will need to pay for, which is really great because it means the barrier to entry for live streaming is much, much cheaper than it used to be. So you then simply connect the USB cable to the capture card, with the capture card then inserted into the computer. Then you'll need a piece of software which you can use to monitor your footage, record your footage, or live stream it, or both, or all three. And that is a piece of software which you may or may not have heard of called OBS, Open Broadcast Software. OBS is a really great piece of free software that does all of those things, so nothing to pay out here. And setting up the camera in OBS is also really simple. All you need to do is click here to add a new source and then click Video Capture Device. Then the capture card will come up in the options here. You may have another option or two if you have webcams or stuff like that already installed on your computer. And then here we go, it appears in the preview window. Perfect, you can see yourself on the camera. In fact, it will show you everything that is output onto the screen, which does mean that you'll see the overlay from the screen, but there are a couple of things that we can do to get around that. You need to set your on-screen display to show as little information on the screen as possible. Default, that's just pressing up on the function wheel. And then you can just crop your image in like this, but it means you lose a little bit of the resolution, but it just means that your camera feed won't have anything extra on it. And there you can see roughly what the image quality is like. So this capture card maxes out at 1080p at 30 frames per second. Obviously, this isn't as high as things like the Elgato Cam Link will get, which provides 4K at 30 frames per second or 1080p at 60 frames per second, I think, but it's still much improved compared to, well, nothing or using a cheap webcam. Now, of course, the image quality isn't going to be as good as it is just pressing record on the camera. It's got to go through all these conversions, it's got to get into the computer, and then, of course, you are live streaming it over the internet, which will lose a bit of fidelity. So you want to do a few bits and bobs to really improve that video quality as much as you possibly can. So if you're interested in improving the quality of your videos in general, check out this video I made here all about how to improve the quality of your videos for YouTube. But essentially, just make sure you've got as much light as possible in the room and it's quite evenly distributed, and that will improve the quality of your image. So I'll swap now to a bit of live stream footage using the same camera that I'm recording with now, a Sony a5100. So here is the capture card in action. I'm using the same camera, the Sony a5100, and the same lens that I've been using for the rest of the video, and the lighting in the room is the same. So you can see the quality isn't as good as when you just record the footage and copy it onto your computer. And the only problem is that you have that bit of information on the screen. If you press up on the function wheel, you'll see that you can cycle through all the different things that are on the screen, so that's even more. So the option I had it on there is the one with the fewest options on the screen. And so you've only really got to cut off the bottom of the screen. So if I just zoom in the shot slightly here, and you do that, okay, you're losing a little bit of picture information. I think that is very usable. So you're losing a little bit of picture information by having to crop in a bit, but I think it still works really well and it's perfect for live streaming, video calls, whatever you need to use it for. Another thing that you may need to pick up if you're going to be streaming for a long amount of time is a dummy battery. This just means that you can have your battery connected to the mains at all times. These cost around £30 on Amazon as well, so yes, another thing you have to pay out for, but it is very useful because you could also use it when you're using the camera just to record for a long amount of time and you don't want to be swapping batteries, you don't want to be stopping the recording, things like that. I'll also link one of those in the description, but you can pick these up pretty cheaply and it's a handy little accessory to have in general. So now you can start streaming using the Sony a5100 or the Sony a6000 for under $50, which means the barrier for entry for live streaming is way lower than it used to be. Being able to live stream with these cameras is really important, especially at the moment. So if you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. And if you want to check out any of my photography, you can find it on Instagram at aaron.prescott. But that's it from me for now. Until next time, see ya.